Hello class. In this video, our goal is to be able to say that you can write and solve number sentence word problems with positive and negative integers. Now, before we move on to the lesson, I want to remind you that any figures or any drawings, whether I drew them myself or they're just in text, should be written down in your notebook. If I ever want you to not copy an image or a figure, then I'll explicitly tell you to do so or to not draw it before the slide goes too far into the lesson. Now, this first slide is something I do not want you to copy down. We're just going to talk about this for a moment. Now, we talked a little bit about this on Monday, and what we said was there are different types of phrases or words that can be used to describe whether we should add, subtract, multiply, or divide certain types of word problems. So you might hear words like together or even the word total to help describe when you should add. For differences, they tell you, look for the phrase left over. For products, you are looking for the phrase times a lot. And for quotients, you might see the word each or per identify that you should divide. Now, I want you to forget about this, which is why I didn't want you to copy it down, because this always doesn't work, and you're going to see why in just a moment. Now, this figure you do want to copy down in your notes if you already don't have it. Now, again, we have sums, differences, products, and quotients, but instead of using a phrase, there are questions you have to ask yourself after you've read the problem. So if you're looking at an addition problem, you have to ask yourself, are we combining similar units? So if Johnny has 3 apples and he finds 2 more, how many does he have altogether? Even though we're using those phrases together, we're combining similar units in the fact that we're adding apples with apples. For differences, we're looking for what's left over or what the difference is from before or after. So I might say Johnny has 10 apples, someone eats 8 of them, what's left over? Or I might even ask what's the difference between the apples he has now and the apples he had before. Now, when you're identifying a product, it can be a little bit tricky because a lot of people mix it up with addition. Because you are combining numbers, but you're combining the same type of number repeatedly. So if I say that someone makes $10 an hour and they work 13 hours, I could add the number 10 13 times, or I could just multiply 10 by 13 to help me identify what the product may be. Now, for quotients, you're looking for whether or not we're splitting up something evenly, and that key phrase is evenly. If you're not splitting up something evenly, then you're not using quotients. You may be using differences. So before we actually go into any examples, I first want to talk about how you identify negative integers in a word problem. And this is actually pretty easy, and again, make sure that you copy this down and this next phrase down. Negative integers can be identified as losses, levels below 0, or something in an opposite direction. So credit card debt is seen as a loss, so that is a integer that would be negative. Anything below 0, like a temperature or sea level, that would also be negative. And anything in an opposite direction would also be considered negative. So for example, when we were first introducing positives and negatives of integers in the terms of products and quotients, we said that moving to the right was positive, the opposite of moving to the right is left, and that was negative. Let's go into our first example. The first example states, due to a pest problem, a local farmer is losing 250 pounds of crops each month. How many pounds will be lost in 6 months? Now, you can see that we're not using any phrases like the word times. We're not using phrases such as combining something or total or anything like that. All I know is that they're losing 250 pounds of crops every month, and this is happening for 6 months. Now, I'm first going to identify that this is going to be a negative problem, or a negative integer, this 250, because this is the weight of crops that they are losing every single month. Now, I know that I'm going to multiply this integer by 6. So 1, because I know it's taking place for 6 months, and 2, because we're combining the same integer again and again and again. I know that the next month there's still going to be 250 pounds of crops missing. So this number is being repeatedly added again and again and again. Now, if I wanted to find the product of this figure, first of all, I know it's going to be negative because it's going to be a loss, right? It's actually going to be a loss of 1,500 pounds of crops. So over 1 month, he loses 250 pounds of crops. Over 6, he's going to lose 1,500 pounds of crops. So again, this is a multiplication problem. Now, in this example, we have that Marcus has $200 in his bank account, and he writes a check for his car payment for $350. What will his account balance be after the purchase? So there's two integers here. We have 200 and 350. So I know he's going to write a check for his car payment for $350, which is money he may not have. So there's two ways you can write this problem. You can say that we have 200 minus the $350, which would be a subtraction problem. Or you can also write it as 200 plus negative 350. Either way, in both cases, our integer is going to be negative because we can tell that they wrote a large check for $350, but they only have $200 in their bank account. So I know that 200 minus 350, or 200 plus negative 350, is going to give me negative $150. So after his purchase, he's going to have negative $150. In this example, we can see that Frankie has $480 in debt. He decides to pay off his debt over 2 months. We want to know how much money will he lose each week toward paying off his debt. Now, the first thing you want to identify is whether or not this is going to be positive or negative. I know it's going to be negative because this is a debt. And we know that this is being paid off over 2 months, but we want to know how many weeks that's going to, or what it will cost each week, I'm sorry. And so we know that in 2 months that there are 8 weeks. So when we divide, because we're splitting this up evenly amongst each week, when we divide, we're going to see that we're going to have a negative integer. So each week we are losing, or I should say Frankie is losing, $60 towards paying back his debt. In our final example, we can see that the coldest day last year was negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit. The warmest day last year was 105 degrees Fahrenheit. We want to know how much did the temperature change from the coldest day to the warmest day. So in this example, we're going to be using subtraction in order to find this integer out, or in order to find our answer, I should say. So the coldest day last year was negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit. So we already know that's going to be negative because it tells us outright that it's going to be negative. The warmest day was 105. So I want to find the difference between the warmest day and the coldest day because I'm finding the change. So I know it's going to be 105 degrees minus negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit. All right. Now, this example, we have minus a negative, and if you remember from our integer work prior to this, we're actually going to turn this into 105 plus positive 22, and we're going to see that the temperature change between the coldest day of negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit and the warmest day of 105 degrees Fahrenheit is 127 degrees, and that represents our change. Now that you're done taking these notes, I want you to please complete the 15-word problems in your notebook. Once you finish, you may continue working on your map goals or your retake assignments. Feel free to send me any messages on Schoology. I will have my phone on me so I can reply to messages, and I will be checking this work tomorrow. Now, you don't have to complete all 15 word problems, but I will definitely be checking this notes. So again, make sure that you complete all the word problems. I want all the word problems written in your notes, and any work that was written down should also be copied as well.